I stood frozen at the bottom of my own staircase with a grocery bag cutting into my fingers, listening to my husband's voice drift down from our bedroom. He was not coughing. He was not groaning the way a man with a fever of 102 should have been groaning. He was laughing, low and easy, the kind of laugh Malcolm used to give me before the years polished our marriage into something steadier, quieter, less hungry, but still, I thought, safe. Then I heard the sentence that split my life into before and after. "Don't worry," he said. "She'll never find out." I did not move. I did not breathe. 22 years of marriage, and suddenly I understood I might not know the man upstairs at all. My name is Naomi Carter. I was 45 years old that March, and until that Tuesday, I would have described my marriage as ordinary in the best possible way. Not perfect, not burning with the same spark we had at 23, but real, solid. The kind of marriage where you know which mug belongs to which person, where you fold his work shirts without thinking, where he texts you when he makes it home because that is simply what love has become after 2 decades. I managed the claims department at a mid-sized insurance firm, the kind of job that paid the mortgage, kept my mind sharp, and let me leave by 5 most days. Malcolm owned a small HVAC repair business he built from nothing. In the beginning, he worked out of a rented garage with 1 borrowed truck, 1 ladder, and more confidence than money. I did his books at our kitchen table on Sunday nights because we could not afford help, and because I believed his dream was our dream. We met at a friend's backyard cookout when we were both 23. Malcolm spilled lemonade on his shirt trying to make my aunt laugh, then spent the rest of the afternoon pretending it was a fashion choice. We married 18 months later. For 22 years, I thought we had been building the same life. That morning started like any other. Malcolm called me at 7:15, his voice thick and scratchy, saying he had woken with a fever and a headache that made it hard to see straight. He said he was staying in bed, taking ibuprofen, and letting his lead technician handle the day's service calls. "You need anything?" I asked. "Just sleep," he said. "Maybe some soup later, if I live that long." I rolled my eyes, even though he could not see me. Dramatic. Sick men are allowed. I made the small kiss sound near the phone that had become one of our habits, told him to drink water, and went to work. By 11, sitting at my desk under fluorescent lights, sorting through claim files while my coffee went cold, I found myself worrying about him. That particular wife worry, ordinary and tender. Did he have enough water? Had he eaten? Did he remember where we kept the thermometer after I reorganized the hall closet? So when lunch came, I skipped the break room and drove to the grocery store. I bought the things you buy for someone you have loved long enough to know his sick day preferences. Chicken noodle soup, the brand with the wide noodles, orange juice with extra pulp because Malcolm claimed it made him feel medicinally fancy. Saltines, ginger tea, cherry cough medicine he complained tasted like melted cough drops but took anyway. I remember standing in the checkout line thinking how sweet it would be to surprise him. I imagined setting a tray by the bed. I imagined him smiling at me, grateful and a little embarrassed to be cared for. I imagined maybe, just maybe, the afternoon would remind us of who we were before schedules, mortgages, and exhaustion wore some softness off the edges. I had no idea I was driving toward the end of the life I thought I understood. I let myself in through the side door because that one did not creak. The house was dim, curtains drawn against the midday sun. For 1 second, everything felt exactly as it should. I set the grocery bag on the kitchen counter and started up the stairs, already composing my little speech. "You better appreciate this because I used my whole lunch hour on you." Then I heard Malcolm's voice. Clear, warm, unbothered. Not the voice from the phone that morning, not scratchy, not weak. I stopped on the landing with one hand on the banister. At first, my mind reached for the kind explanation. Maybe he was on the phone with Calvin from the shop, handling some contractor crisis even while sick. That would be like Malcolm. He had answered emails from urgent care once when a commercial client had a rooftop unit fail during a heat wave. So I stood there, not exactly eavesdropping, just waiting for a natural pause so I could knock and announce myself. Then he laughed. That easy laugh. A woman answered him. Her voice was too low for me to catch the first words, but it was not familiar, not one of his sisters. Not his dispatcher, not a client I had ever heard on speakerphone. My stomach dropped before my mind did. There is an old part of us, I think, that recognizes betrayal by rhythm before facts arrive. The too relaxed voice, the wrong kind of pause, the way your own home suddenly sounds like a place you entered without permission. I gripped the banister and listened. "Don't worry," Malcolm said, casual as weather. "She'll never find out." I will hear that sentence in my sleep for the rest of my life. I did not storm through the door. I did not drop the grocery bag or scream his name. Something in me went very still. The woman's voice came clearer as my ears adjusted and my heart stopped roaring. She did not sound like a mistress trying to hide. She sounded brisk, professional, almost bored. "Are you sure Naomi signed everything?" she asked. Signed everything. Not, does she know about us? Not, what if she catches us? Signed everything. Those words did not belong to an affair. Those words belonged to paperwork. "Everything's in my name," Malcolm said. "All of it." He laughed again. "Naomi signs what I put in front of her. Always has. She never asks questions." Heat rushed into my face, not because I was guilty, because he was right. I had signed things. Folders at the kitchen table, forms he called refinancing paperwork, tax documents, business restructuring pages, insurance updates. Malcolm would slide a pen toward me and say, "Nothing exciting, baby, just routine," and I would sign because that was our marriage. He handled the money. I handled my job, the house, the people, the birthdays, the meals, the emotional labor of keeping a life running. We had called that balance. Now I stood on the stairs hearing him call it useful. The woman upstairs asked another question then, lower but clear enough. "And the trust?" "Set up," Malcolm said. "She signed the authorization last fall. She thought it was estate planning." "Good." That makes the beneficiary shift cleaner. Beneficiary. The word landed differently from everything else. It was not a romantic word. It was not even a business word in the casual sense. It belonged to policies, deaths, endings. For a second, I saw myself from above, a woman on her own staircase holding soup and orange juice, while her husband discussed who would receive money if one of them died. I remember the banister under my palm, smooth wood, warm from the sun that came through the landing window. I remember thinking absurdly that I had meant to dust that morning before work. The mind does strange, merciful things when too much truth arrives at once. It gives you a banister, a dust thought, the weight of a grocery bag, anything smaller than the fact that the man in your bedroom has been using your signature like a tool. Then Celeste said, "After the final account moves, there is not much left for her to contest." Malcolm answered, "Exactly." That was when I knew the affair, if there was one, was not the center of the story. The center was me being moved out of my own life while still standing inside it. I stayed there for maybe 90 seconds. It felt like an hour. The deeper instinct in me, the one I did not know I had, told me not to open that door. If I confronted him, he would explain. He would soften. He would find a reasonable story because Malcolm had always been good with reasonable stories, and I would be too shocked to know which question came next. So I backed down the stairs. One careful step at a time. My hand stayed flat against the wall to keep me steady. I picked up the grocery bag from the counter, let myself back out through the side door, and sat in my car in the driveway until my hands stopped shaking enough to hold the steering wheel. I drove back to work on autopilot. At my desk, claim files blurred in front of me. Are you sure Naomi signed everything? What had I signed? By the time I pulled into the parking garage after work, I had made one decision clearly. I was not going to ask Malcolm what was going on. I was going to find out before he knew I had heard a single word. That evening, I went home and made dinner. Malcolm came downstairs around 6 in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, performing illness just well enough that the performance itself made me cold. "Fever broke," he said. "I slept most of the afternoon." Good, I said. I heated the soup I had bought for a man who had not needed it and watched him eat from the bowl I set in front of him. He thanked me. He even reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I smiled. 22 years of marriage had taught me many things. That night, it taught me I could hide pain better than I ever imagined. For the next few days, I lived two lives. On the surface, I was Naomi Carter, ordinary wife. I asked Malcolm how he felt. I reminded him to take medicine. I listened when he complained about his technician mishandling a thermostat installation. I folded towels. I watered the plant in the kitchen window. Underneath, I began moving. I also began remembering. That was the first punishment after the shock. Memory turning on the lights in rooms I had left dark. I remembered a September evening when Malcolm brought home a stack of papers and told me the business insurance needed updating before renewal. I remembered him tapping one page with the pen and saying, "Here, here, and here." I remembered laughing because he sounded like a nurse at a clinic. I remembered signing without sitting down. I remembered a rainy Saturday when he told me our mortgage lender needed a quick authorization to keep our rate options open. I had been making gumbo for my sister's birthday dinner and had okra on my hands. He held the page on a clipboard while I signed at the kitchen island. I remembered asking once, maybe 2 years earlier, whether I should understand more about the business accounts. "You already have enough on your plate," he said, kissing my shoulder. "Let me do what I'm good at." At the time, it sounded loving. Now it sounded like training. I bought a folder of my own that week. Plain blue, nothing dramatic. I kept it in the bottom drawer of my desk at work. Every statement I requested, every screenshot, every date I could place went inside it. At lunch, instead of eating, I made lists. Documents I remembered, dates around holidays, names of accountants, closing companies, insurance agents, banks. I became almost clinical about it because clinical was safer than devastated. The first call was to our bank from my car in the office parking garage. My coffee sat cold in the cup holder while I waited on hold. When the representative answered, I requested copies of every joint account statement going back 3 years. "Is there a problem with the account?" she asked. "I am reviewing our finances," I said. It was the smallest possible version of the truth. What arrived over the next several days began unraveling my life, one document at a time. There were accounts I did not recognize, not secret offshore accounts like in movies. Domestic investment accounts opened under Malcolm's name, funded with transfers from places I believed were joint. There was a home equity line of credit I had never knowingly discussed, drawn against nearly 60% of our equity. There was a life insurance policy where my name had been removed as beneficiary 11 months earlier and replaced by something called the Carter Family Trust. I had never heard of the Carter Family Trust. That was when I called a lawyer. Her name was Renee Okafor, and the first thing I noticed about her was that she did not waste my time with soothing phrases. Her office was downtown, all clean glass, law books, and a framed photo of 2 little girls in matching Easter dresses. She listened to my entire story without interrupting once, her pen moving steadily across a legal pad. When I finished, she set the pen down. "Naomi," she said, "when Malcolm asked you to sign documents, did he explain in detail what each document did?" I opened my mouth, closed it. I tried to remember, truly tried. "Not really," I said. "He would say it was routine, tax paperwork, business paperwork, refinance terms. I trusted him." That last sentence came out smaller than I expected. Renee nodded once. "Trust is not consent to deception." I wrote that down later because I needed to see it in my own handwriting. Over the next 2 weeks, Renee pulled records that painted a picture larger and colder than a simple affair. The woman upstairs was Celeste Morgan, a private financial consultant whose public listing described her work as asset restructuring and wealth transition planning. Wealth transition. I sat in bed one night reading that phrase on my laptop while Malcolm slept beside me, and I felt something hollow open under my ribs. Celeste was not primarily a mistress, if she was one at all. She was a specialist. She was helping my husband take apart our marriage financially, piece by piece, signature by signature, while I slept next to him and signed whatever he handed me. The earliest change Renee found was almost 4 years old. A modest retirement beneficiary adjustment. My signature was there. I did not remember signing it. Renee did not accuse me of carelessness, and that mattered. She could have. Plenty of people would have. They would have asked why I signed without reading, why I let him handle things, why I did not notice a home equity line or trust authorization sooner. But Renee understood something I had not yet forgiven myself for. Manipulation inside a marriage rarely begins with one outrageous ask. It begins with ordinary trust, stretched 1 inch too far, then another, until the distance looks normal because you have been walking it for years. He used the relationship as the explanation, she told me. That is why this feels so disorienting. He did not just lie about documents. He made your history together part of the mechanism. I sat with that sentence for a long time. He made our history part of the mechanism. That was exactly it. Every time I signed, I was not only trusting a paper, I was trusting the man who took me to the emergency room when I had kidney stones, the man who shoveled our neighbor's driveway after her husband died, the man who danced with my mother at our 20th anniversary party and made her laugh so hard she cried. It is hard to suspect someone who has been kind to you in rooms where no one else was watching. That is what makes betrayal inside a long marriage so dangerous. It comes wearing proof that love once existed. From there, the pattern grew slowly. Property interests shifted. Investment accounts were consolidated under Malcolm's sole name. Business assets from the HVAC company were moved into a new entity. Equipment, service contracts, receivables, all reclassified in ways that made his business look separate from the marriage, despite the fact that I had co-signed the original loan and spent years doing his books for free when he could not afford a bookkeeper. Renee built a timeline, 4 years of documents, 4 years of my own name used like a key I had handed him without noticing which doors he opened. I sat across from her one Tuesday afternoon and stared at the pages spread across her desk. There was grief in me. Yes, a deep grief for the marriage I thought I had. But there was fury too, slow and clean, not loud enough to make me reckless, strong enough to make me stay seated. "There is something else," Renee said. I looked up. The most recent filings suggest he is preparing for a final transfer. Soon. If it completes, unwinding this gets much harder. What kind of transfer? I need a few more days to confirm. I drove home that evening past the house I had lived in for 18 years, the one with the garden I planted myself, the kitchen I renovated with money from my bonuses because Malcolm's business was still in a reinvestment period, the front steps I painted one summer while he worked 80-hour weeks, and I told everybody how proud I was of him. I pulled into the driveway and sat there before going inside. The house looked ordinary, porch light on, Malcolm's work truck parked slightly crooked like always, a basketball hoop from the neighbor's kids visible over the hedge. The maple tree we planted our 5th year of marriage spreading bare branches against the evening sky. I thought about how many parts of that house had my hands in them. Not just money, labor, time, care. The downstairs bathroom wallpaper I stripped with a rented steamer over one long weekend. The garden beds I edged myself after watching 3 tutorial videos. The office shelves I stained in the garage while Malcolm was out on emergency calls. The refrigerator paid for with my bonus because the old one died during a heat wave and the business account was temporarily tight. He had counted those sacrifices as marital background noise. Renee was teaching me to count them as evidence. I was no longer only a wife who had overheard something troubling. I was a woman standing at the edge of losing everything she had helped build. Renee called the following Monday. "I need you to come in today," she said. "Not this week, today." I told my supervisor I had a family emergency. It was not a lie. Renee had the full picture now, or close enough. Malcolm was preparing to sell our house, the one with my garden, the one where my mother had spent her last Christmas. the one whose kitchen floor I had scrubbed on hands and knees the day we moved in because I wanted the first meal cooked there to feel blessed. A preliminary title transfer request had been filed 8 days earlier under a fast, close arrangement designed for investors who did not want complications. Malcolm had not mentioned it, not one word. He had also initiated an early withdrawal request against retirement funds, penalties and all. Fast cash mattered more to him than long-term sense. Celeste Morgan's firm had helped him open an out-of-state account at a bank I had never heard him name. The kind of place, Renee said carefully, that handled quick transfers with very little curiosity until lawyers started asking better questions. Then Renee slid one more document across the desk. A personal loan Malcolm had taken out 6 months earlier, using the house as collateral. If his plan had worked, I would have been left with almost nothing. Not the house, not the retirement funds, not a clear claim to the business I had helped build in its hardest years, not even the comfort of understanding how I had been stripped bare by a man who once promised me his whole life. I sat very still. To my surprise, I did not panic. Panic belongs to confusion. This was clarity. Malcolm had built his plan on one assumption. Naomi Carter was trusting, busy, and easy to guide past the fine print. He had no idea how wrong he was about to be. "What do you want to do?" Renee asked. She was not only asking about legal strategy, she was asking who I intended to become in the face of this. I could have gone home and thrown the papers across the table. I could have demanded explanations. I could have watched him scramble for whatever story he had prepared. I chose differently. "I do not want to warn him," I said. "I want him to believe he is still ahead." Renee studied me for a moment, then she nodded. "Good. Then we let him walk farther out on the limb while I start cutting it from our side." For 3 weeks, I became a woman I barely recognized. I sat across from Malcolm at breakfast and asked about his day. I kissed his cheek before work. I let him believe his lunch-hour meeting upstairs had gone unnoticed. I let him think the same trusting wife was still signing herself out of her own future. It was not easy. Renee gave me rules. Do not take papers out of the house if he might notice. Photograph them and put them back in the same order. Do not empty accounts. Do not make a move that lets him call you the unreasonable one. If you need to cry, cry in the car. If you need to scream, call me after business hours and scream into the phone. But when you are with him, you are calm. "That sounds impossible," I told her. "No," she said. "It sounds unfair." Those are different things. So I learned unfair. I learned to take pictures of documents with my phone angled away from the kitchen light. I learned to forward emails to an account Malcolm did not know existed. I learned to check the printer tray after he used his study, because once he forgot a draft letter to the title company face down under a service invoice. I learned that men who think their wives are not paying attention get lazy in small ways. A sticky note left on a monitor, a call taken too loudly from the back porch, a folder set on a desk instead of locked away. Each small mistake went to Renee. Each small mistake became part of the wall. Some nights I lay beside him listening to him breathe and wondered how anyone could share a bed with someone for 22 years while planning to erase her claim to the life they built together. Other nights I nearly woke him just to watch his face when I said Celeste's name. Each morning I remembered what Renee told me. Patience now means protection later. Rushing now means giving him time. So I waited. Renee worked fast. She filed for an emergency injunction to freeze joint accounts before Malcolm could complete the final movement. She sent formal notice to the title company handling the house sale, flagging my ownership interest and stopping the fast close Malcolm had counted on. She began the process of subpoenaing records from the out-of-state bank. She notified the retirement account administrator that the withdrawal was disputed. Every piece moved into place quietly. Meanwhile, Malcolm walked around our kitchen humming. That was almost the worst part. He was cheerful, relieved, more affectionate than he had been in months. He brought home takeout one night and said I deserved a break. He complimented my hair. He rubbed my shoulders while I stood at the sink. I let him. There are moments when survival feels like dishonesty. I had... She... Then what? By Friday, I had never... I kept turning 4 years of documents spread across a conference table like a confession Malcolm had written one signature at a time. Emails between him and Celeste discussing asset protection strategies in language no honest marriage should require. Refinancing forms I had signed attached to property transfer documents I had never been shown. Wire records, entity filings, the hidden bank account, the fast close house paperwork. Then came the life insurance form, the beneficiary change, my name removed, Carter Family Trust inserted, my signature at the bottom. Renee had hired a handwriting expert. The signature was not mine. That broke something in the room. Malcolm's own attorney, a tired-looking man who clearly had not been told everything by his client, went silent. Forging a spouse's signature is not just betrayal, it is a crime. Everyone at that table understood what that meant. Malcolm stared at the page like it had arrived from someone else's life. But it was his life, his choices. His the court move. I learned. Instead, I came home with soup and orange juice for a man who was not sick at all. And that ordinary decision saved the rest of my life. If you are listening to this with that small, uneasy feeling in your chest, that quiet voice telling you something is not right even though you cannot explain it yet, trust it. Trust does not mean you stop asking questions. Sometimes asking is the only way to protect what love should never have put at risk. Tell me what you would have done in my place. Would you have opened that bedroom door? Or would you have waited and built the case? Leave a comment and tell me where you are watching from. I read everyone.